That song was from the summer of 1965. Do you believe in magic? Do you believe in magic? If you do, then watch this. The summer of 1965, Do You Believe in Magic, was the first time I heard these guys. The Lovin Spoonful, Steve Boone, Joe Butler, two members of the four original Lovin Spoonful. I appreciate you guys taking this time because they're going to be going on stage real soon. And they're going to be singing all of these great songs that we grew up with. I was going into my junior year in high school when I first came across your music. And you know, back then, the biggest thing on our minds, of course, being school and the Vietnam War and the 60s was, you know, accelerating at the speed of light as we were all getting towards college age. But we were listening to the music that really took our mind off of those things, and the music that my father and other people of that generation said, don't pay attention to that rock and roll. Stay out of trouble and don't go near that. Just get ready, go to college, keep your nose clean. This rock and roll beat is a little different from Frank Sinatra.
Yes, it was.
When they got out of the Army, when they got out of the Navy, they elected Dwight Eisenhower, who was their Supreme Allied Commander, as their president. Nothing changed for them, but it was changing for us, and they didn't like that. They couldn't accept it. And Alan Freed, growing up in Cleveland, Alan Freed just hypnotized us all with rock and roll. When did rock and roll hypnotize the two of you?
Well, I can speak to a specific moment. In 1956, I was helping a neighbor of mine. He had an old race boat. We were racing down the St. Johns River in Florida. And on the way home, he was older than me, and he had a radio in his car, and we were listening to AM radio, and then all of a sudden this song came on, and it blew me away, and it was called Peggy Sue. And the minute I heard that song, because the combination of the beat and the lyrics really defined for me, this is something different that I want to be part of. Very impressed. And by Buddy Holly in general, but that particular song did it for me.
Oh yeah, and the way he played that guitar, the way his hands moved.
Well, also he was one of the first bands the record company would let play on their records. That was very rare in those days, where the musicians were actually in the band.
They tried to do it another way; it couldn't be done, and it was very much like garage band stuff now, and very much like when you do record live, like Louie Louie was recorded with a single microphone, right? You know the story. Everybody grouped around it. They had two takes. They used the first one, and you know, still nobody knows the half of the lyrics. You know.
When we get done, I'm going to tell you the story about Louie Louie. Well, I'm going to tell it to you now. I'll cut it out.
Okay.
No, I was with Gaynell Hodge last week. He wrote with Angel, with Jesse Belvin, and he wrote with Jesse Belvin, "Good Night, My Love." And the best man at his wedding was Richard Berry, who wrote Louie Louie. And he talked about that at length on video about Louie Louie, and now you bring that up. It's just...
Well, it's one of those songs that's recorded, you know, and they recorded in that garage, and it was brilliant, absolutely brilliant. And it's funny because one of my first connections, and I was connected with early country because I worked with this guy that had an Italian deli.
Where were you growing up?
Great Neck, Long Island.
I
grew up in a very affluent Jewish community.
Oh, yeah.
I was a townie.
My aunt lived there.
Townie, oh, yeah. And I grew up with country music and rock and roll at the same time. But when rock and roll hit, and I started hearing, you know, get out in that kitchen and rattle those pots and pans, or boom, 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 for anything. What was one of the ones that was popular? Shaboom, shaboom, yada yada yada. And when Steve talks about, I remember Buddy Holly because Saturdays I was working in a print shop. I used to gather up all the lead from the linotypes and melt it and cast these ads and stuff. And we had a bowling ball radio, and and it had two antennae out of it. One was broken, so we ran a wire to the fluorescent fixture, and "That'll Be the Day" came over that speaker.
You want to quit, Ethan? That'll be the day.
Well, that'll be the day when you say goodbye. Yes, that'll be the day when you make me cry. You say you're gonna leave, you know it's a lie, 'cause that'll be the day when I die.
You know, it took them a while they were experimenting with stereo and everything to get to where they would mix in those little speakers that people had to listen to in the cars, and those were already being, you know, done. You were cutting your records very hot But we had a luxury. Geez, we had 4 tracks when we first started out, thanks to Les Paul.
Yeah.
God bless Les Paul. Not only for inventing the electric guitar, but multi-track recording, which is the whole deal. It's too easy now. I mean,
it doesn't take a lot of talent anymore.
Yeah.
Well, I think there's a
Yeah,
dividing
you get
line
by with
between
stuff.
talent and accessibility. I think there's too much accessibility and the talent gets wasted, because if you really don't have a lot of choices, you usually can focus on what you do best. But it seems to me with digital recording and all the benefits that brings, it gives people too many choices and the talent is wasted.
It's a nice way of putting it.
There's a book called The Horse's Mouth, and it was done with a movie with Alec Guinness, and he would break into people's places and paint on their walls, and there were a couple places he broke into. But the whole theory of the underlying theme was, if you're a painter, when do you say this is enough? Now, you don't put any more paint on the canvas. You say that's it, no more. Now, when you have 4, 16, 32, 128, 256, unlimited, 10,000 tracks. You have to be careful. People only have 2 ears.
Yeah.
There's only so much stuff you can
absorb,
take in.
yeah.
And that's why in Motown they had that KISS, keep it simple, stupid, because people could only follow a melody line with some harmony. And it's the average person is not wants to have it accessible.
So you guys were growing up at a time when all there was basic instruments in rock and roll, just a guitar, just a bass, just
Start
a
an
set of
electric
drums.
guitar,
Yeah.
People were even playing stand-up bass in rock groups,
Hey.
including Buddy Holly.
Yeah, Joe B.
And the other one, which was considered because of Rock Around the
Bill
Clock.
Haley.
1, 2, 3 o'clock for it. That guy had a whole bass act. We would go around in a circle, he'd play it upside down. Yeah.
We got to meet all the Comets before they died.
How nice.
I got my picture taken with all of them.
Oh,
One
neat,
by one,
neat,
they
neat,
started
neat.
dying off. And I did an interview with the last surviving member, Marshall Lytle. And
Drummer was he? No.
No, Marshall did play the stand-up bass. Yeah, that was him.
Yeah, I think
That was Marshall Lytle. Yeah, he was in a wheelchair in the last couple of days of his life. And they finally inducted him into the Rock Hall because when they first made the inductions, Smokey Robinson, but they left out the Miracles. Buddy Holly, they left out the Crickets. And
That's
Bill
not
Haley.
right.
No. Well, I'll tell you what. We pushed and pushed because we're from Cleveland to get the Miracles in, and they finally agreed to induct the Miracles in 2012. And with that, they said, well, we're going to correct all of our mistakes. They brought in the Crickets.
Did they bring in
Comets.
the Imperials? Because the Imperials,
they
each
came in
one
as
of them
group.
are brilliant. They're brilliant, those guys. Individually, together, each one of them is a brilliant
They
singer.
were in 2009, and they came in as a group. So yeah, the Rock Hall,
good.
by then they recognized. See, when they first started inducting, they had no rules. Let's just put the
because
biggest acts in.
because the people that voted were the business guys and the guys that were on the board that got together. But as they inducted more and more people, then we get to vote. So pretty soon, now all the votes, the largest voting block are the musicians and the
Yeah.
people that have won awards that are
Makes
for
more
playing
sense.
and it's a different standard,
It's a better standard
Yeah.
too.
It's not just record sales, although
Well, see, okay, now you're going to talk about Chubby Checker when you talk about record sales.
Chubby
He'll
Checker.
never get in. Alan
because he
Freed.
covered the record because it was a cover record of.
No. Alan Freed's brother. Alan was from Cleveland. His brother David was an attorney in Cleveland. I got to know David. And before David died he died in May of '97, and we talked a lot that year before he died. He told me, he said, everybody in the music industry, not the fans, they don't like Dick Clark because of the way he testified in front of Congress back in April of 1960.
He also knew he's like Trump. He never pays.
Where do you think Dick Clark made all his money? Initially, where do you think he made it? From guys like me. Granted, I cannot say anything derogatory. I can't say anything bad because I owe my success in the record phase of it to Dick Clark. Had he not put that show, and you want an inside story? Harry Rosen was my distributor. Harry Rosen comes to me, and he said, Artie, he said, you're not going to believe this. Dick won't play the record unless you give him 50% of the publishing. I said, what? He said, you heard me. the record does not go on the air until you give them 50% of the publishing. I said, now, Harry, you tell me, do I have a choice? He goes, didn't even say no, just shook his head.
Which record was that?
At the Hop. Wouldn't put the record on the air until I gave him 50% of the publishing. But I have to love the guy. You know, it's a bittersweet situation with me. Because without him, and without me saying, go, there'd have been no At the Hop, no Danny and the Juniors. From the inside, I was right in there. I was right part of the whole scene. And I saw this whole crummy situation develop with everybody with their hands out and grab, 50% of publishing, writers' fees, and this and that, and artists getting screwed.
He says, look, if you don't want to do it, we can get... So he'll read you a list himself of other people that are chomping at the bit to do it if you don't want to do it.
I have
so you don't get
people who have
you
admitted.
you get free merch.
He will write out the check because the union came down on him. He'll write out the check. You don't get to leave the studio until you sign it back. Okay? He did that with the Dobells, all these groups. Freddie Cannon appeared on more American Bandstands.
I love Freddie Cannon. We're good friends, and his
You
wife
asked
too.
him. You asked him about signing the check.
He never told. He wrote a book. I'd love to read it, but I never. But he had the best, most ballsy introduction. More balls than a bowling alley. Remember Steve when his introduction was, "Ladies and gentlemen, it's Freddie," and the drummer would go boom boom Cannon. That was, and he'd come on stage. He'd say, all right, stop it. Put your hands down. Now listen. Be honest now, folks. How many of you have never heard of me? Never heard. Don't stick your hand up. Don't be afraid. Come on, get them up. How many never heard of Freddie Boom Boom Cannon? A few hands up. Okay, now to put them down, because I don't know who the hell any of you are either. So let's get started. Remember, Freddie?
That's kind of cute.
Oh, God, is he great. We had such fun with him. Always on the boat, we had such fun with him. I don't know, I do a bad impression of him, I guess. But he's amazing. I love him. And I said, boy, this guy's not afraid of the audience, like Jack Benny, he's just wait. And
I met him out at the Surf Ballroom the first time for Buddy Holly. And then I was out there for the 50th anniversary, 9 years in 2009, and the people that showed up, so many of them are dead. Johnny Preston and Joe B. Malden, all the, there's only one cricket left, Jerry, but so many people were out there. It was just David Somerville, such a great night. 6 nights of concerts. I was there for every night. It was beautiful. Yeah.
Great, yeah, it's great.
Let me take you guys back though to the 50s. Right? Tell me how it was evolving for you, because I was growing up too, just a few years behind you, but I was growing up and I didn't become a singer. I didn't become a performer. What made you think that this was going to be your way of life? Now I know you had to be convinced this was going to be your way of life because you wanted to go to school.
Not only convinced, but I had no intention of being a professional musician. I was, up until the time when I was 16 years old and had a very serious car wreck, I was focused solely on joining the military, most likely the Marine Corps. And the accident rendered me 4F because I was no longer able to join or be in or even get drafted.
And you never fully recovered then, so that you...
Well, in recovery, my mom bought me LGL Gibson guitar, the basic acoustic guitar, because I was laid up on a couch for over a year. And my brother Skip, who Joe and Skip had one of the first really great Long Island rock and roll bands, would come by and every afternoon.
Was that the Kingsmen? Is that
yes.
Yeah.
And would show me a new chord, and I had nothing else to do, so I just learned the guitar as a therapy. But then, as time went on, and then as I got good enough to actually play in a band, Joe and Skip invited me to join the Kingsmen with them, and it became a profession by accident, really. And I don't mean to make a pun on that, but it really was the accident that sent me off in that direction.
So when you got in their band, you knew this is what you wanted to do?
Well, I really liked playing with these guys. This guy's such a tremendous drummer, and Skip, of course, was always an idol of mine. I just thought the world of him, and so it was more fun than it was profit at first, but then when it got good, and we were probably the hottest band on eastern Long Island for a few years in the early 60s, it started dawning on me that this could be a career if we really put our nose to the grindstone, and that's what we all did. Everybody, decided to make it a career rather than just a weekend occupation.
So we put our noses to the grindstone and made it a career, and we succeeded, but we have flat noses. No. For me, it started when I was in high school. As I said, I was 14, 13. I was always working. I worked in a soda fountain even when I had to do the apron thing, so I wouldn't step on. I loved working here, and I had a bunch of jobs. But I was listening to the radio. But I begged my parents. I got a guitar, and I took some lessons, and nobody could have played it. It was a harmony. The strings were an inch. I mean, the guy that was teaching me never even put it in his hands, you know. And so then I wanted to get drums, and my father was very gracious. He gave up his little workshop, which was a little place in the basement, and we put up the 8 crates and put the drums there, and I put a radio up there, and I couldn't afford records, so but all the records, and I would just play along with the radio and sing, play and sing, play and sing.
How many kids in your family?
I have an older sister who passed away and 2 younger sisters.
So you were the only boy.
I'm the only boy.
So did you get what you wanted, or did they put up with you?
I'm surprised someone didn't kill me. My father was a cop and had a gun. That's probably the only reason the neighbors. I can't imagine someone putting up with someone learning the drums now.
And how about you? You had 2 kids in your family, or
3 kids, 3 brothers. The older brother played guitar, and then when we moved from Florida to Long Island in '58, a year later, Skip came with the drummer he was working with in Florida, Jan Buechner, and Jan set up his drum kit in our garage because he stayed with us till he found a house, and I thought drums would be the instrument, but I was no good at it. I didn't have the independent coordination you need for drum
weren't your
kit.
parents telling you, come on guys, pay attention to school, cut out this rock and roll?
Absolutely. There was no encouragement from either, and there was a musical instrument always in the house, a piano. It was always music to be played. But my dad was single focused on me becoming a Marine. I was christened at Camp Lejeune, North Carolina.
I was born in
And I was christened by the base commandant as the future commandant of the Marine Corps. And so the pressure was on, and it wasn't like an active don't mess around with that rock and roll stuff. It just was,
They gave that look, just the look.
Just the look.
Yeah.
The first band I was in high school, we had an accordion player and Nels Johnson. We met in the Boy Scouts. Then what is after the Boy Scouts? Your Eagle Scout, whatever. And
Cub Scouts and the Boy Scouts.
Yeah, maybe it was. And he played accordion, and I sang and played drums. And we had a guy named Charlie Schumann played guitar. He played very interesting guitar because he played bass runs and stuff. He had an interesting way of playing. And we started getting jobs. We learned that you had to learn Irish songs for an Irish wedding, or if it was Italian, you had to, hey mama, or you had to learn Hava Nagila if it was a Jew. So we'd figure out, if we wanted to get, there was a guy that had a bar, and when he would have events, as a novelty, would have us come in and play. And we started playing around a couple bars, and they would call it. They say, "Can you play Polish? Can you do the polka? And you do Pennsylvania polka." It started in Scranton, not Cleveland. It's now number 1. So we learned, and.
But are you making money? I get paid.
We made money, and we made good money.
Happy.
And my parents really let me go. I dropped out of college. I was introduced to my job, and I had done 4 years in the Air Force. I was in 2 years in reserve. I was in the Air Force when I was in the band with Steve. I got choice of assignment. I went to West Hampton Air Force Base. I boxed in the Air Force. I boxed some air policemen. We had to defend ourselves.
You were stationed on the island for 4 years?
Yeah.
And you boxed?
Well, no. Before, the reason I got choice of assignment, the head of our school squadron needed boxers to do the amateur boxing, and we're going up against some air policemen. And when we used to march, you'd have to march in precision. And because I could sing, I was up for air policemen are a bunch of shits. Policemen are a bunch of shit. Sucking on their mama's tits. Sucking like what's my mama? And they would break ranks, the air policemen. So they had a vendetta out for us. Not only, but me and a couple other guys. So 3 of the guys that wound up together: Tony Hartley and Don Johnson, black guy. Tony Hartley, his sister was Mariette Hartley. Father was a famous behaviorist, Watson. It was his mother's grandfather on his mother's side, and we volunteered to box and learned a little bit, and I boxed, and I missed coming out first in the base because I gave this guy a haymaker. There was a shot in the newspaper, but he was so pissed off, and I wasn't ready for someone coming at me. I didn't understand that he was so humiliated. I mean, I hit him so quickly and hard that his head hit and his legs were up, and that was the picture in the newspaper, me standing over him like Cassius Clay at the time with Sonny Liston, you know, looking down at him. And he jumped up, and I didn't put Vaseline on my face because I didn't want to get pimples. And he snapped a couple punches and got me bleeding by the third round, and they stopped it. Because I was bleeding.
I remember they put the Vaseline on.
Yeah. 'Cause, you know, and he snapped.
Wow.
He knew what to do. He was so pissed off because he was humiliated.
Was he an AP?
Yeah, air policeman. Oh yeah, we had trouble with them.
Well, one of our singers in the Kingston was an AP.
That's right. Yeah, Sonny Boteri was an air policeman. Steve first played guitar in the band, and we had Clay Saunier was a bass player, a kid from Louisiana. And Steve and I went, and Skip went, we went to the Sears Roebuck store and bought a guitar, you know, with the silver thing glued on, you know, the little pad with it's not even play, and a bass, and a couple of amps,
Silvertone amp.
a Silvertone, and a bass, and you know, and that gave us some instruments to play around the bass. But we soon wound up playing in very Tony supper clubs, and my parents were proud of us when we could invite them to Herb McCarthy's Bowdoin Square. Now at the same time we were working in Pinckney's Inn, where migrant workers would come, and they would get bottles with a handwritten label out the back door, and we worked in places where there were gay clubs and there had to be a couple women on the dance floor. We worked in places, we found, after a while, we worked, the place we really scored was a place called the Cottage Inn. It was a black chicken and ribs place that some of the rich were
Located where?
in Springs in East Hampton, Long Island. And the Cottage Inn was Noah T. Simmons. He was the first guy to say, you got to get a picture on a poster. And we went around postering, and this was East Hampton, you know, they were snobs. They were more snobby than the Southamptons and the West Hamptons. They thought they were better than anybody. And a couple of times they'd say, you can't put this in the window. It looks like a fight poster. You know, we were band shots taken. And we wound up renting VFW halls, hiring off-duty police, buying truckloads of soda, running dances with tickets. We made
You're
a lot of
renting
money.
these. You're producing everything yourself.
Yes, with
And you're how old?
Well, I was in the Air Force. I was
Oh.
20 years old.
Okay.
We realized we could
And you're
make
in the band
more
at
money.
this
Yeah,
point,
yeah.
I had joined the band
Yeah.
by this time. Yeah.
We started playing VFW halls and sold tickets and took ads in the paper where we were going to play, and we, you know, we had crew clean up after. So we were doing, and that's when they offered me $2,000 to go to Vietnam. Sorry, guys.
So we're talking about 62,
Yeah.
63?
Yeah. That's when I got out of 63. I was in there 59 to 63.
Okay, so when
Then 2 years
you
later.
got out, President Kennedy was still in office, and then he got assassinated.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
So history is marching along, and while it is, you guys are playing in the band, but you don't really have any direction out of New York yet. At this point, you guys are still focusing on playing in front of the home crowd.
Where we were. It wasn't until I was discharged and Skip also started making trips into the city to see what was going on that we started pecking around. And we were in the streets. I had a hookup where I could carry my drums. I mean, actually walking.
Really? You were able to take that whole kit on your
Oh
body?
shit! Yeah, it was ridiculous.
But you did it.
Yeah, sure. And also because of a story Skip told me, his brother, in St. Augustine, where Skip lives, there was a drummer there that played on all the early Nashville records, and he used to always walk around with drumsticks in his pocket. And because we were in the Village, when we finally came to the Village, I always would walk around. I was always taking him out and playing on things, trying to make different sounds, which I'm still doing. I did special effects for films, but I'm still doing it for my play. I wrote a dozen songs, and I just rewrote the first one, and we put in a bunch of percussive stuff to keep it more contrapuntal. Anyway, I just did that 3 days ago. Using the same stuff I'm using, my stuff. Got a compound bucket for street style, and they actually have a garbage can lid that has like a snare in it, and it has a rattle tin. You hit it, it's like you kick. Anyway, when we brought the band to the Village, within a month we had a manager. Within 6 weeks we had a record deal, Mercury Records.
That's before.
That's
before,
before.
yeah.
It's before the Spoonful.
But you were with John at that point?
No, John and Zolly kept coming to watch us.
Oh,
We
really?
had a guy that took over Steve on the bass. His name was, I saw him recently. No, not Marshall, but he played guitar. We did, by that time we were doing Beatles songs, Motown songs, Beatles songs that they couldn't even do because they were, as George said, we're always moving on. We did songs with Rubber Soul and Revolver, and they were killer songs. The audience were eating them up. And we were doing folk songs too, and it was almost like we changed the name to the Sellouts because it was like we sold out. We were folkies that sold out. By that time, Lemon Tree, Peter Paul and Mary, Dylan, all the folk, we sensed it, and we really were the first folk rock band, truly, that existed. And we didn't know it then, you know, and people that, of course, brand themselves successfully, like the Byrds, could come on the scene and captured some of that folk. You know, of course, we were pigeonholed in that along with many other acts, but I've always thought that we, and others, and even the Byrds were more eclectic, but we played on all our records. The Byrds never played on their records. Jim McGuinn played the guitar. The Beach Boys never played on their instruments on their records. The Mamas and Papas, dear friends, never played on those records. They were played by the Wrecking Crew, the professional. Carol Kay, the best bass player of any gender in the universe.
I might take a discussion on that.
Oh, wait.
Wait,
No, actually, I didn't mean that. But as a recording bass player, as Brian Wilson said, she was always on. She was just right there always.
He was the missing link then. Steve is the missing link, and when you got into the group, it was all together.
Well, we're talking about two different. I was never in the sellout. I went to Europe in the summer of '64 and bought motorcycles, and my buddy and I rode all around Europe till the money ran out. When I came back in December of '64, Customs called and said, your bike is here, you can come in and pick it up. I called Skip and Joe, said, oh, can I stay with you guys when I come in to get my motorcycle? And they said, yeah, but bring your bass with you. And I had no idea why, really, because I had just gotten back from 4 months in Europe. And then I got in there, and they said, go over and meet these two guys in the village. They're looking for a bass player. And I said, well, why? I've registered for college in January. I'm going back to school. Southampton College. It was the first semester of the new Southampton College. And
I went there, took Spanish, and I took logic and I'm sorry, syllogistic reasoning, sorry.
So I was actually pretty much on the cusp of giving up it as a career because I wanted to get into mechanical engineering and become an automobile engineer. That was now that I couldn't get in the military, I wanted to build race cars and do that. So that was my thing. But I met John and Zoe on December 15th, 1964, and the chemistry was so instant. I brought my bass. I go and meet John Sebastian and Zal Yanofsky, an odd name, I thought, but nonetheless, I was kind of used to odd names. And like I said, I get to this closed for the afternoon, really funky little coffee house on West 3rd Street in Greenwich Village. And I go in, and they had gotten the keys to open it up for the afternoon, and we sat down, and with two guitars and a bass, we just jammed for a couple hours on Chuck Berry and Elvis and anything that came to mind. And the chemistry was just so good that I was stunned. And then John said, stick around for a couple of days. If you want to hear me play in a nightclub setting, I'm going to be working at this place called the Night Owl Cafe, which was about a half a block down West 3rd Street. And when I got in there that night, I didn't know any of these people, but I met John Sebastian, who I'd already met. I met Buzzy Linhart, who went on to become a well-known musician in the village. I met Timmy Harden, who would go on to have fabulous. I met Freddie Neal, and I met Felix Pappalardi. And this was the band that played, and the first song they sang was The Water's Wide by Freddie Neal. And it stunned me to the point of like I almost saw my jaw drop to my chin. It was so good. And I'm telling you, to this day, it's the finest musical performance I ever saw. Just that first song. Because after that, they got good, but I was just like, oh my God, these people were like way above me.
They had recorded, they had been around, and they knew their stuff, yeah. Although, I would say that I didn't even know it existed, heroin. I saw both Freddie Neal and Timmy Harden nod out in the middle of their sets at different times. Two different shows. Just stop and then just stop.
And we lost both of them because of it.
Yeah.
But anyway, that was a stunning introduction to Greenwich Village for me. I had come in, like Joe said, on weekends to go and party and listen to whoever was playing in the coffee houses. But to me, it was like holy shit, this is really the real deal. And then, of course, John started talking to me, and then Zolly was like this firecracker that you just couldn't turn off, and it was like almost like I had been a spell put on me. And I literally went back to Long Island and got some clothes and came in, and Joe and I got an apartment together, and the
Were you already in the band? Were you already there?
No, Steve was in the band first, and actually
Oh.
Jan Buchner, I had recommended Jan because they were also looking for a drummer, and Steve, and so did Skip, his brother, you know, knowing that they'd be back and they wanted somebody, you know, and because they kept coming to watch me, and I was wondering, you know, what did they keep coming for, but when with Jan Buchner and Steve, there's one recording and it's terrible because the mic it's too loud, the singing, but Jan was a good drummer. But Jan was not loose, and they also needed somebody like me that could sing harmonies and sing leads, and they needed another, so you at least have two vocals, two harmonic vocals behind whatever lead was whoever was singing. Zolly sang some, I sang some, John sang.
Plus, Jan was older. He was my brother Skip's age, and the age didn't make the difference, but the generation he came from did. His musical style just didn't fit in with us.
He was a good drummer, he would many times I would come up in front and he would sit in the kit. He would always be there at the shows, and he would sit and I'd go up front and do stuff. The one thing is, Jan, here's a guy, to talk about the kind of guy he was. He wanted to change his name in the band from Jan Buchner to Jan Carl. When there's another guy in the band named Zal Yanofsky, you know, it was like, I don't know why he wanted to anglify or vanilla-ize his name or whatever, or put it to, you know, and Jan was kind of like that. He was fussy kind of guy, but beloved, you know, and also we had a friend named Seth Connor that was in the band for a while, that could do great Ray Charles stuff. We did really good. If we did a Ray Charles song, we followed up with
Well, this wasn't the Spoonful.
Yeah, this is it. Yeah, right. This is it. Yeah.
This is what? This is before.
This was still. I went back to the Kingsmen. You know, just the different songs we played. I mean, we would do a Everly Brothers song, and then do a Ray Charles song, and then we would do a Buddy Holly song, and then we would do a Motown song. Then we would do a Beatles song or two. And then we had a huge repertoire, and because, as you know, people that play together that much, and we were playing all the time, we only had to go through things that we had listened to by then. We had a sense memory of it, that we would go through it a couple of times and we had it, especially if we were putting it into a bar setting, you know. And many of the places we played, I mean, we played this one place, this is the Kingsmen again, Tony Marino's Palm Terrace. It was basically there so that the Air Force guys could come there and fight to music. That was basically what it was. And many times we were glad we had the axes and the bottom of mic stand. I saw a guy went at it with a brick, bashed his face till somebody grabbed him. I mean, horrible fights, you know. And Tony Marino would come out. He one time shot the hole in the ceiling, you know.
Well,
you're fucking up my joint, boom! You're fucking up my joint. His voice would go up 3 octaves.
We'll edit some of that.
Oh, so
well, you know, something else we did.
It's the truth. Yeah,
Okay,
go crazy,
right.
blow a hole in the ceiling.
Something else the Kingsmen did that was pretty unique is that we played standards too, out of the fake books.
That's right.
I Cover the Waterfront, Stella by Starlight. These were songs that weren't in the repertoire.
Cherry
of most
Pink and
rock
Apple
bands.
Blossom White.
And we had a saxophone player, King Charles, who was quite literally my major musical inspiration. He taught me things in that couple of years to learn how to play standards when I really didn't even know how to play a scale. But he taught me so many things in those couple of years that I have to credit him with being my major musical influence outside of Joe and my brother Skip.
The King Charles used to wear a lot of watches, and in some ways when we were the King's Men and we were playing in this black club, which after a while the black people weren't happy with because the rich people kept coming, the Fords and the Kennedy, all these people were coming down slumming, hanging out in this place because we were like these white kids playing all this black music, you know. And King Charles, we had stuff worked out. When we did that song, some of these things are killer songs. And when you get to the part, ba 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 ba, watch me now. By the time we would start it, King Charles would work his way to the men's bathroom, and when we go, watch me now, he would kick the door open and go, blah, blah. So if anybody was having any problems, you know, getting on with it, I'm sure he encouraged them. And he would kick the door in the men's room. And we God, we had such fun. You know, it was a lark. And
3 weeks ago, I interviewed Joey D. We talked about how this. I mean, not quite like this.
Joey D, I know him and his wife very well.
Yeah.
Yeah, Starlighters. We used to see him at the Peppermint Lounge and go to the Wagon Wheel across
Yeah,
the
he
street.
talked about that, and the Kennedys coming in.
You know, there was another nightclub I have to mention in Midtown, right around the corner from Wagon Wheel on 45th and Peppermint Lounge, the Metropole.
That's
And the Metropole, the bands would start at 11 a.m. And we used to go in like these Long Island Railroad passes that would give you a weekend pass for $3 or something like that, round
Back
trip.
and forth, all you want.
Yeah, and we could go in and go to the wagon. You could drink at 18 in New York then, and we would go in, and the band, the kick drum was at eye level. It was up on a raised stage.
Across
and I
from
would
the
go
back
in
of the
and
bar.
all my dressing cues, all my rhythm cues came from watching. I don't even know who the drummer was, but he was double kit. Just a fabulous drummer. I go in there and have a couple of drinks and watch his feet kicking the bass pedals, and it was a fabulous place to go and hear live music.
All the
at
jazz
11
guys
a.m.
would work. Gene Krupa would come there with his band, and Dizzy, the one with the horn, Gillespie, was he the one with the horn
Yeah,
tilted up?
yeah.
And that's the first place I saw Dino Danelli play.
Yeah, that's
And he was jamming with somebody, but it was true. It was a bar, and you were but some of the greatest artists. I mean, you know, Art Blakey. I used to go to see the drummers, knowing I never could be a jazz drummer. But Art Blakey had this press roll, and the fastest single stroke roll was recorded by Buddy Rich when he was 13. Single stroke roll, the
When
fastest.
he was 13.
13. And just to watch all the drummers, you know, to be able to go up to the Palladium, to be able to see Harry Belafonte on Wednesday night, $2. I had phony ID. I learned all those Latin dances, and Harry Belafonte would come in and he would sing 3 or 4 numbers for nothing. Mama Look a Boo Boo Day, Deo, from that first album, Scarlet Ribbons. He'd make you cry. You sing Scarlet Ribbons, the tears would run down you. Good stuff.
You
Good
guys are being
stuff.
exposed to the best music
Yeah,
in
it
the
was
world.
a great.
We
era.
were.
It was
So
a
how
great
could you
era.
turn away from that?
I could never.
Yeah.
For me, when I was a kid,
It was
I
a
had no
great
choice.
era. It was, even if I had never become a professional musician, I would always remember that mid to early '60s era of New York City's music scene. It was fantastic.
So it's 1965, New Year's, and all of a sudden your focus, instead of going to college, is now committed to the group. Here we are, 4 of us together, the Lovin Spoonful. What are we going to do? First of all, the story of the name. Tell us where the name came from.
Well, you know, first I gotta get one thing straight. In January 1st, 1965, the band started, but was with Jan. So really, the Lovin Spoonful that's sitting here today hadn't begun.
Joe's not with you yet?
Not until, actually didn't join until February. And what we played a night at the Night Owl Cafe because the owner of the Night Owl was a good friend of John Sebastian's who grew up in Greenwich Village.
Joe Mara.
Joe Mara, his name was.
John Sebastian grew up in Greenwich?
John Sebastian was born on Bank Street,
I didn't know that.
and his father was a world-renowned classical harmonica player. So his influences as a child was all of these world-class musicians and other artists coming by the house, living in Greenwich Village, growing up there. So he knew Joe Mara, who owned the Night Owl, and Joe had told John, you get a band together, I'll give you a night here. Well, we put 2 weeks of rehearsal into this band with Jan Carl, and took it to the Night Owl, and Joe Mara's comment was, you guys suck. Go back and rehearse some more and we'll consider you again in the future. And that's, of course, when we got Joe to join the band. But, you know, the one thing that's important, we still hadn't heard any of John's original songs by this point. We were doing covers. We were doing some folk songs that were adapted, some, especially some of the easygoing blues songs that came out of the Delta Blues era. But we hadn't done any original songs yet until Joe joined the band. And that really changed everything, because once we had heard Do You Believe in Magic just played for us by John, it was pretty obvious to me that this was a horse we could ride off into the horizon on. It was really good, and it was original. And where the name came from was that John had been like a go-for Lightnin' Hopkins and Mississippi John Hurt. When they would come to the village, he would go and sit with them, help them run errands for
Listen
them.
to their stories, learn their
Listen to
history.
their stories,
Sure.
learn his guitar
Worship.
playing. And Mississippi John Hurt had a song called Coffee Blues. And in that song, there's a line that goes something like this. I'm not sure exactly, but it's "I Love My Baby" by the Lovin' Spoonful.
I wanna see my babe by the loving spoon, by the loving spoonful. Well, I've just got to have my loving.
And that's what I remember. And the Lovin' Spoonful was the name that was suggested to John by Fritz Richmond, who was a bass player for the Jim Kweskin Jug Band from Cambridge.
Now, bass player means a clothesline and half a broom and a wash tub. He was, sorry, and he also played jug. Sorry.
Yeah, so Fritz Richmond is really the man who gets the credit for coming up with that name. I didn't like it. I'll be the first to admit it. I said, you know, John, I think it's a clever sounding name, but I can't imagine a rock band that would be called the Lovin' Spoonful. It did not appeal to me in the slightest. I warmed up to it, obviously, but it would not have been a name I chose.
Well, when we heard it as the band, the group that's playing this great music, come on. Lovin'
That's
Spoonful.
what I said.
We originally, I thought I threw it in the hopper, and everyone, let's just call it the band. Let's call ourselves the band. I said, come on,
That'll never work.
Yeah, that'll never work. But I believe part of the story was he used to drink coffee, like the Mississippi John Hurt, but it was mostly gin with coffee, just gin in the coffee, and then he would sip it. And when he was down to the end, it was like the Maxwell. He would tip it out, and one drop would come out. And he would say, "That's how I love my baby. I love it by the Lovin' Spoonful." Now, there's a lot of variations of whether that could be spoonful of semen, spoonful of heroin.
That's pretty much the...
You could really take it either way. You know, it's kind of a double.
Well, unfortunately, what Joe just mentioned, a lot of people thought it was a reference to drugs. And it really
Right away.
was. Well, a lot of people did. You know, you cook heroin in a spoon, and that was pretty much what, at least the folks that the crowd we ran with thought, oh, what was it, drug? You know, something to do with drugs, but it had nothing to do with drugs. So, it was, and then, you know, of all things that we really disliked about our record company when we released Daydream, in Cashbox Magazine and Billboard Magazine, they took out a full-page ad with LSD in huge letters, and then Lovin' Spoonful, Daydream in little teeny letters. Lovin' L-S Spoonful D Daydream. And it was LSD is what you read when you opened the page. And that just cemented it with a lot of people as to being a drug reference. But it wasn't. It was just the record company thinking they were clever.
Oh, they did that intentionally to
Oh,
be
they
cute.
did it absolutely intentionally.
The name of our producer, Eric Jacobson, who produced even King's Sellout stuff, which Steve and I just got some of the stuff we listened to his brother play on when I sang it.
Do you believe in magic? Okay. Where did you go record it? Where did you actually... Bell Sound? Up on the second
Floor there.
Yeah.
Eric Jacobson got money from his father, his brother or father, who's a dentist, and we recorded 5 sides or 4 sides. 4 sides. I think 3 of them made the top 20. At least 2 of them made the top 10. And we got no one wanted it. No, we couldn't get a
Was the
deal.
younger girl recorded at that time too?
Young Girl, Magic, and Good Time Music.
And Nice was
Was Nice in
it
that?
had to be originally. Maybe Nice came later.
I can't remember the 4th one right now. Might have been Make Up Your Mind. No, that came later too. But Magic was the one that they pitched. They pitched Do You Believe in Magic, and everybody loved it. Every record, Joe Smith from Warner Bros. I love it, but if they don't have a British accent, I can't sign these guys.
Oh, that was right. Yeah, the people at the Buckingham School.
They couldn't relate to an American band at that in 1965. They weren't willing to take the gamble until, 3 boys from Brooklyn who had a lot of connections with the movers and groovers of the record business, and they said we can get singles on the air. They didn't know what to do with albums, but they
Charlie
did.
Koppelman, Hi Ms. Rye, and all those
No,
guys.
Charlie was our publisher.
Right,
Charlie and
but
Don
Charlie
Ripper.
also got records.
Hi Ms. Rye and
Artie Rip, who was
and,
really was talented.
And then there was the mobster guy, the blonde-haired guy.
Mobley, believe me, Moishe got most of our money. Believe me, we did. Well, by the time we settled up, we didn't get a penny for our work with the Lovin' Spoonful until 1991.
Really?
Not a nickel.
You
not
mean
a
all
dime,
that great music
not a
from
dollar,
the mid-60s?
not a penny, not a sou
But we got an advance on the 67 record.
We did get an advance, that's true, on an album, but yeah,
that was
that was
it.
true.
That was it.
But,
That was
but
it.
none of that was an
20 years.
advance. That wasn't in the original for any of the original hits. And Moishe Levy was up there, you know, in this. He wasn't only going after, you know, Moni. We kind of knew, but it didn't lessen its effect on us. You know, it was terrible to realize we were kind of ripped, you know, by it.
But what kept you going?
Already
But what kept you going was your stage performances. I mean, is that what really
Well,
sustained you and kept you wanting to do
Well,
this?
just don't forget, this was the era of the singles. We had our first 7 records all made the top 10. Nobody did that in those
Yeah.
days. So we had the gas in the tank. We didn't really need to create any more excitement. What we didn't have was a record company that saw the coming of stereo music on LP albums. They thought it was going to be singles forever, and that's where they put us into that caravan of people that were writing single after single after single, whereas Warner Brothers and Columbia Records knew LPs are coming, we better start getting our artists groomed for the complete album.
Right. The
Beatles
whole
did.
album, it wasn't just a series of individual things. People started having storylines, and we did that too. But yeah,
So you go to the top of the charts with "Do You Believe in Magic?" Now from there, you guys are looking over the horizon. You can see, oh, this is never going to quit. We're on top of the world.
I don't think any band thinks that.
You didn't
I
think
mean,
that?
you see, the Beatles are interviewed. They said, "How long do you think you keep going?" Lennon says, "I don't know if we probably thought we'd be over in a week or two." You know, it's like you never know. We didn't think about that. We were so busy with day-to-day stuff, recording, and what we didn't have the luxury that, let's say, the Beach Boys and the Beatles did, where they were living in the studio. They were. Brian was there all the time. We were going in, and we were told the same way Phil Spector told Bill Medley, "Oh yeah, it's good. You know, we're not changing anything." They would say, "Oh, you'll have time to fix that. We're going to set up a session next week," and we'd hear it on the air. One time, Bill Medley, you know, he's listening. You never close your eyes anymore, and he's got Phil Spector on the phone. He's saying, "Listen, I want to change that." He said, "No problem. Listen, I wouldn't screw you. We're going to go in and we're going to do that second verse just the way you want it." And suddenly, Bill Medley hears the record on the air. Well, he's talking to Phil Spector. I mean, it's kind of a their act is better almost than anybody that's on the stage. The Office act, you know,
Yeah.
and they lie with impunity, and it's and they wind up being like, you know, if I can say Trump or somebody, they wind up being serial liars.
Well, it meant money
You
to
know.
them. They didn't care really so much about the artistry or about your craft. They only cared about what was going into their pockets and their bank accounts.
Plus, I also think they bought into that at age 30 it all goes away. I think that in that era, the record company execs pretty much thought rock and roll will die out once the artists get to be 30. But as we know now, you know, the era of the album changed everything. And once Sgt. Pepper's and those kind of records started coming out, people in their 30s and 40s, and they kept buying and buying. It changed, but our record company was one of the old school. And they didn't see it coming, or they didn't want to see it coming because it was a bigger investment in an LP than it was in a single, by far.
We recorded cheap and fast. We whipped things out.
Daydream was done in a week. The Daydream album was recorded in a week.
You know what I mean? So and plus we're on the road trying to capitalize on that because that was the only income. Steve did some of the songwriting, the publishing got money. John got money. Steve got some for the early song, but there was no real money earned with the records. It was all from the road, and even that may have been manipulated.
Yeah,
You know?
yeah. So you guys are performing every week. You're performing
260 days in 1966. 260 days on the road.
You're
Not
on your
260
band.
days,
You're getting
but on the road.
Yeah. You're getting American Bandstand exposure. You're getting
Your own name, if I may.
Zal Yanofsky.
Zal Yanofsky.
Melachea Shoreless.
Your name, please?
Joe Butler.
Thank you, Joe.
John Sebastian.
John, what's the name of that instrument?
It's an auto harp.
This is an auto harp. You punch this and that happens, right? And your name, sir?
Steve Boone.
Thank you, Steve. Now, if I can drop in here for a second. Where did the name The Lovin Spoonful come from?
Well, it came from an old jug band tune sung by a fellow by the name of Mississippi John Hurt. And a friend of ours who works in a jug band, a modern-day jug band, thought of the name and gave it to us.
All right, now, there may possibly be somebody who doesn't know what a jug band is. Can you give us a quick one-line description?
I believe it started early because nobody had money to buy instruments, you know, so they put together washboards and a jug, and the guitar was about the only instrument, right?
And they blow on the top of the jug,
Yeah.
and so forth. Huh?
They hit sticks.
Sir,
And they hit sticks, things like that.
how long you fellas been working together?
Oh, about 8 months or so.
I got to jump way down to the man on the end here. Is it Steve? Pardon me, Steve. I kind of lose you out in left field. What kind of music do you call this?
Good time music, I suppose.
Good time music? Yeah! No, I think you've aptly titled it, but I've asked everybody in the world, and I can't seem to get a name for the new trend in music.
Exposure, you're getting Ed Sullivan exposure. Everybody sees you. Everybody's going to want to come and see you when you come to our town. So this is what really keeps you going, because, as you say, Morris Levy and the Thieves are.
Morris Levy and the Thieves. That'd be a good name.
Good band name. You know, and then we went to England, and you know, and that was considered the quicksand of the record business. Is that you don't go to England and compete with them, because the Byrds tried it and they flopped. Mercifully, I mean, it was terrible flop. And we went over there and had this one thing. We did good. We had this one thing happen where in the middle of Fish and Blues at the Marquee Club in London, which was the club to go to, our amplifiers died. And Joe kept playing, John kept singing, Zolly went through the motions with his electric guitar, and I didn't know what to do, so I kind of pretended I was playing. But our amps were dead, but the voices were on. Joe and John were singing, and he was playing drums. And you know, in that audience that night was Stevie Winwood, George Harrison, John Lennon. I mean, this was the royalty of British rock. Were in the Marquee Club, hearing that set, and it made it for us. We were instantaneously on a par with the Beatles at that point, as far as the English crowd went.
Why? If they couldn't hear you?
Well, that was the only one part of one song. We did a whole set.
Oh, you're talking about
just what dead? Yeah.
This was at the end of a set that was fabulous.
Oh.
And so we were given the imprimatur of like, well, finally America's produced a band that could stand.
Because the Stones were playing their own records, so were the Beatles. Although I must tell you, they had the help of the London Philharmonic Orchestra for sweetening, which is not a bad. Our early stuff, we did everything. We didn't have sweetening. It was later that we added some stuff, but they were really spending. The Beatles anyway were just in the studio. They weren't really. At one point they stopped working, and working so little, you know.
Yeah, they stopped in '66. I got to see them in that last tour, August of '66, Candlestick Park, and that was the end of it.
Yeah.
You mentioned.
That was great.
Yeah.
Okay. That was the song where we had a false start, and I tell you look at that video today on YouTube of that false start, and then we went on and played You Didn't Have to Be So Nice after. Anybody that says the Lovin Spoonful wasn't a kick-ass rock band has never seen that live performance.
Who said that?
A lot of people said we were too lightweight and that we didn't have the chop to play on stage.
Some of the songs were, you know, yearning of a young man, kind of. They weren't as ballsy as some people, like the Stones were considered.
Yeah. The Stones, were you there when the Stones and James Brown were having the fight over who goes on last?
No, but we heard of that.
Yeah.
We heard about it. But it wasn't really a fight. I think that the producer...
And now the beat is the Lovin Spoonful.
James Brown did everything but eat the audience, you know. I mean, he did everything but swing on, you know, walk, crawl around the ceiling. I mean, what he...
The Miracles were there, and I'm trying to think of the other... Was it Beach Boys there?
Yes.
Were they?
I don't remember. Jan and Dean were there.
Yeah.
And
what a show. I went out there. It was at Santa Monica Civic Center.
Mm-hmm.
I remember going out there a couple
Yeah,
summers
yeah.
ago, and we did a tour of a lot of nice interview, a lot of nice places. And she said, "Well, we were there in hopes that somebody would cancel out so we could get on the show, but we were there." And she shows her on the bus. She's on the bus talking to the performer. She's on the riding, but didn't get to perform. I'm sorry.
No. This is great, good stories.
No, I enjoy all this rock and roll history that we grew up with. So, some of the songs now, how did they come about? Summer in the City, 1966. We used to walk around with the little transistors. We went nowhere without that transistor. And I can remember exactly where I was hearing it. Boom! Summer in the City. I mean, I was out in the park. There was nobody around.
Gave that drum to the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame.
That drum's in
It
there.
was the hugest floor tom. I always thought it'd be great if they lit it up, or something, and did something when they would play it.
Yeah.
But, they archive a lot of stuff. They can only put out so much
That was the
stuff.
#1 hit in '66. Of course, the biggest song of '66, though, now that was Green Beret. We were getting ready for the Vietnam War. And the federal government was putting money into the commercial ads for Barry Sadler. Because it didn't matter, Cherish was the second biggest song. It didn't matter what kind of music you had, how good it was, because we had to prepare the American psyche for Vietnam buildup, and the Tet Offensive the next
Well, it
year.
happens. The phenomenon of government manipulating people after World War II, the men had to get the jobs back, so suddenly women were femmed up. They had to wear the dresses were shorter. They were told, when they needed the women, they were told, oh, if you can work a sewing machine, you can make bomb sites or whatever. They were courting women to take the jobs because men were going, but when the men came back, right away, they had these...
Get back into the home.
Absolutely. Hairstyles, longer, everything was
Ozzie
more...
and Harriet.
The
Beaver, we have to condition them, wear your earrings, your apron, get into the kitchen. We had to follow certain patterns, and when you stepped out of that pattern, that's when the clashes were. And that's when, of course, the Vietnam War, and the biggest thing on my mind was staying in college so that you don't get drafted. So I get through 4 years of college, and boom, they draft me. So, hey, it just didn't work out that way, Dad, but I tried to explain to him about this war, and no, my country called, we went, now you go. That's all I had to hear.
It's...
So we went. But you guys were still making great music.
We've met guys, besides the obvious two things of some lady or husband say, the first time we made love was to one of your songs. In the line when we're signing. Or somebody from Nam will grab your hand and say, listen, man,
oh yeah,
you got me through
you
Nam.
helped me get through that.
You helped me get through Nam. And what are you going to do? Say, you can't peel the guy's hand off. He means it, You don't know when you throw that pebble in the pond, those ripples can go anywhere. And he means it, and it probably did. Some of those songs help connect him with home. And it happens more often than you might believe. Especially especially guys from Nam, that were in Nam.
Also, it's important to remember that we had long hair. And if you had long hair, you were automatically identified as being anti-war. And there's a whole lot of gray area there that people wouldn't explore. You either were for the war or against the war, but in between, there were people like me that realized we were honoring a treaty obligation. And the soldiers don't have any say in it. You can't be mad at them because it's a bad war.
When I
But
walked into...
too many people were willing to blame the long hairs for being anti-military when really that was blanket statement, not true.
Everybody got categorized. You're either this, you're either that. Even now, you're either a leftist, you're on the right, you're whatever. I remember walking in my uniform, walking to Jackson Square in New Orleans. I was with 4 buddies. We all had on their uniforms. We're going back to Fort Polk, Louisiana. The whole crowd stood up and started booing. Well, we're looking around.
Are you kidding?
We didn't know they were booing us. We're looking around at who they're booing.
What bullshit.
And then they started pointing at us. And I'm 22 years old, and I'm thinking, I just got drafted. They put this uniform on me. People hate me now.
Yeah, well, that was
What a
a
shock.
tough era. That was a tough era.
1971.
And we were criticized from within our industry for not making anti-war songs. And the Lovin Spoonful never had any mission statement other than good time music. It didn't fit into our mission statement to be anti-war. It was more that we wanted to provide a relief from those kind of pressures and stress. Good Time Music was what we wanted to do, but we were criticized for not being more active in the anti-war movement.
Well, you guys were hippies. You had long hair and you
Right.
had glasses, so you must have been
Hippy dippy.
You know, get out there and start marching.
Absolutely.
Get a God for why don't you get a haircut? Get a job.
You know what?
People would yell that.
The construction workers, my father, that's what they were thinking.
Yeah.
Get a job and get off the streets and
Yeah.
do that.
Well, it was
I
an
never
odd
stopped.
time.
Steve and I, we never stopped work. Boy, when you're a traveling band, you're working hard. You know,
But they don't.
we work hard for the money.
They they don't know that.
I think my only comment would be the opportunity that I had to write a song with John. You didn't have to be so nice. I had always tried my hand at songwriting from the days I first learned how to play guitar, and I liked the folk music, and I would learn those folk songs. But I never really thought I had the mojo to do a real professional song. And then that song came out, and it was our second hit, and it just gave me a huge boost of confidence that I didn't have before. So that's really my biggest memory from the songwriting end of it. Everything else was just that it was such a fun thing making those records. It was not a labor of hard work. It was a labor of, this is fun to do this. And you know, I don't think you can recreate it. You have to capture that moment in time, is what we did. So my memories are all good. I didn't have those memories of some people did. I hated being in the studio, or you know, I didn't get what I wanted to get done, and I just look back on it as a real glorious time. So I'm just grateful that I had the opportunity.
And look, 55 years, you're still playing it. So obviously you liked it enough so that you, in your 70s, you still want to get up on stage and perform that great music.
It's a great feeling to share something, and it means to Steve and me, and I'm sure everybody, it means the world to us. It's an honor, it's a privilege, and believe me, there were times for Steve and I, you know, they said, well, how long are you going to do this now? And we were saying, how long are you going to last? Well, it could be over in 2 weeks, but they're going to have to, like Charles Heston said about his gun, they will have to pry my cold, dead fingers off the microphone. I'm not letting it go. Steve, we worked too hard to get back on that stage. Wasn't an easy route. Putting an old band together and knowing that we could do a really good job and not just, skate through it, but really touch all the bases. And so we're going to do we're going to leave it on the field, If it comes down to either of us, one of us doesn't want to do it or can't do it, then if the other one can make the decision if they want to go on. And there are people, as a matter of fact, there's a band, I could show it to you, it's a tribute band. Now they do pinch a little bit of our action in there. I'll show it to you on the phone. But it's an honor to have a tribute. There's a couple of them, and they do all the songs. I think I have it
Dennis
here.
Dykins in it.
Is he? Is that the guy that's in it?
Now, how do they dress? How do they look?
I don't know.
Do
I've
they
never
look
seen
like-
them.
do they-
I haven't. Here it is. They're using this out. They're using the album as a kind of. It's a little. They do say it's a tribute band, but if you notice, they've got our pictures from the album.
Yeah.
And their names, yeah. Steve's got it. Yeah, can you
But
read the names? Yeah.
Yeah, a
But
little
the
bit,
ticket
yeah.
sales, they do say it's a tribute, but they're
That's
not
good.
really.
They
It
have
says-
to. Yeah.
It could be, but we could never play these places. They're 160 seats or something. We
Oh,
couldn't
yeah.
afford to play it, and they couldn't afford to pay us.
Well, you guys are going to take the stage in a few minutes. We're going to let you get dressed,
Well, thanks, Tom.
and I'm going to bring this camera.
Excuse me, Tom. I work nude. You mean I'm going to get undressed. I work nude. I put some
Well, then
ribbons. I have
then I'll
ribbons
come
I
nude
tie in
too.
interesting,
We'll all be
interesting
nude.
places to keep the audience's attention. Just that when I do take stage, I can announce my presence with authority and more wrinkles than a Sharpay.
I'll cover that up with on the video. Thanks, guys. I appreciate it very much.
Well, thank
Thank
you, Tom. It was very
Thank
interesting.
you. Great questions. Great to talk.
You're so nice. I would have liked you anyway. If you can just look once or twice to go upon your quiet way. Today said the time was right for me to follow you. When I knew I'd find you in Monday or two, being just true. You came day or two in this room. You meant to be so nice. I would have liked you if you had just looked once or twice. Gone up on your quiet way. Alright. Get work before that too. Well, now there's 1,352 guitar pickers in Nashville, and they pick on notes and the number of ants on the Tennessee anthill. I said 1,352 guitar cases in Nashville, and anyone that unpacks a guitar can be twice as better than I will. When I was just 13, you might say there was a musical proverbial knee-high. When I heard a couple dudes sounding tunes on the tunes, and they blasted me sky-high. And the record man said everyone was a yellow sun record from Nashville. And up north ain't nobody buys them, and I said, but I will. And it was Nashville cats, big cleans, country water. Nashville cats, play wild as a Mountain Dew. Nashville cats, and places they left. Nashville cats, get work before that too. All right. Is there a doctor in the house? Well, sit tight, relax, we're all fine here. And if you ever get sick, you sit you quickly to that dusty closet shelf. Pull up the washboard, make a guitar chord, you a little to it yourself. Call your neighbors, talk about their neighbors, gonna get out of every time, because the doctor said, give just band music is easy to make a feel just fine. Well, I was floating in the ocean, Christmas suntan lotion, when I got wiped out by a beach boy. He was surfing when he hit me, but jumped off his board to get me, and he grabbed me by the armpit like a child's toy. I was staggered in the lake with all the waiters eating sandwiches, I got the bush and towel from the oil boy. He emptied out his drums, I emptied out mine. Everybody knows the paradise life. Come on, the doctor said, give him just band music, it seemed to make him feel just right. I remember a younger girl keeps rolling across my mind. And should I hang around and act like a brother in a few more years they call us right for each other. And why? If I wait, I'll just die. Yeah, a younger girl keeps rolling across my mind. No matter how much I try, I can't seem to leave a memory behind. I remember her eyes, soft, dark and brown. Said she'd never been in trouble, even in town. And a younger girl keeps rolling across my mind. She's one of those girls that seem to come in the spring. One look in her eyes and you forget everything you had ready to say. And I saw her today. Did you ever have to make up your mind to pick up a one and leave the other behind? It's not all that easy, not all the time. Did you ever have to make up your mind? Hey, did you ever have to finally decide? Say if you want and let the other one ride. There's so many changes since you reside. Did you ever have to finally decide? Sometimes it's one would be blue, excuse about it. But they're down in here, and plenty of money. And just when you think she's the one in the world, your heart gets stolen by some bossy little girl. And then you know you better make up your mind. Pick up a one and leave the other behind. It's not always easy, not all the time. But did you ever have to make up your mind? Come on, come on. But darling, be home soon. I couldn't bear to wait an extra minute if you don't know. My darling, be home soon. It's not just these few hours, but I've been waiting since I turned on for the great relief of having you to talk to. Since I turned on for the great relief of having you to talk to. You gotta go, let them keep that crazy hands against the sky. We gotta fly and see beyond the houses in our eyes. It's okay to shoot the if you don't know, my darling, be home soon. It's not just these few hours, but I've been waiting since I turned on for the great relief of having you to talk to. Something special by 6 o'clock in the morning when it's still too early to knock. And that dusty light shines down on the block and reflects up and down on the hands of the clock. 6 o'clock, 6 o'clock. A few hours ago she was standing here the same happy town. And a melody with a slave and happy sound. Six o'clock, 6 o'clock. If I go back to where we started, would I ever be like that again? If I have to have to wait till tomorrow, what can I do till then? I guess I'll go back home and I'll get wait until dawn. Yep, I haven't learned going back where we were, but helping on. And I wish for him and been working right. We'd have gone for coffee and talked all night. But now I'm back alone, twisted up tight. 6 o'clock, 6 o'clock. Yeah, man. Come on, dance all night. It'll be alright, baby. like to eat, it'll be alright, babe. Don't you know it's a late in the days, and we like the nights in the summer, in the city, in the summer, in the city. They are shining lights on you, right? Thought I was having a stroke. Here we go. Hot town. Baby, baby, baby.